Welcome to Hyde Talk, and I'm your host, Jen Lobozzo. Hyde Talk is an open and honest conversation about character, leadership, and education. Today, we have a few special guests on an educator panel, our three teachers from Hyde. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Let's just take a minute for you to each introduce yourselves and what your role is as an educator here at Hyde School.
Yeah, my name's Justin Siekierski. I teach English 10, sports physiology. I've been teaching for 9 years now. In the past, I've taught English 9, journalism, learning connections, etc.
My name is Ruth Molina Garcia. I'm from Spain, and I'm here teaching Spanish and ELL support. I'm teaching Spanish 1 and 2. I've been teaching for a few years now. This is my first year at Hyde, and I've taught at university for 2 years and a half before.
My name is Sean Condon. This is my 11th year at Hyde. I've been in the math and science departments for most of that time. This year I'm head of the math department and also an assistant dean.
Excellent. Well, Hyde is certainly lucky to have you all. And today, first let's start off by how did you come to be an educator? Let's talk a bit about what your journey was, because I know for me when I was in high school, if anyone told me that I was going to be a teacher or a Spanish teacher, I probably would have laughed. But yet, I feel it's the path I'm on. So Justin, how did you become an educator? What was that for you?
Well, similarly, if someone in high school told me I was going to be an English teacher, that was certainly one of the last things on my list. Funny story, actually. My grandmother, before she passed away, told me that I should go into education. And again, I was like, no way, there's no chance, you know. Years later, I found Hyde Woodstock in Connecticut, and interviewed, long interview process, became a faculty intern, living in the dorm, coaching, teaching. That time was more on the academic support, nighttime, daytime tutoring, and sort of just continued making steps, continued growing as an educator, and 9 years later, still in love with it, still going strong.
And also continuing your education in the sports arena as well as an educator.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Ruth?
So my mom is a teacher. My grandparents are teachers. Some of my aunts, uncles are teachers too. So I guess it comes with the family. But I didn't imagine being a teacher before. I had other ideas in mind. I wanted to be a veterinarian or a physiotherapist. But I came to the U.S. 10 years ago, and I learned English. I learned in 10 months what I didn't learn in 15 going to school and trying to learn English. I don't feel like I had good English teachers, but also comes with the educational system and the way we learn English at a school. So that changed my life completely. And then I went back to Spain and I thought, if I can learn that much in 10 months, how much can I learn if I keep learning languages the rest of my life? So then I wanted to change that for other people, and that's when I decided to be a teacher so that I could actually teach English in a way that students could actually learn. And then I didn't imagine teaching Spanish, but I got a scholarship to do my master's at West Virginia University and teach Spanish there. And I taught some private classes teaching Spanish before, and then I just started learning by being exposed in front of the students in the class, and that's how I learned. And now I actually like teaching both, and I don't know which one I could. If I had to decide one, I don't know, because I really like teaching both. So
Luckily, you don't have to decide.
Yeah.
So you're able to do
Yeah.
both. But that's really neat that you're living a legacy that your family had set before you.
yeah.
And what about you, Sean?
So I started in education immediately after college, and it was essentially just because it was a pretty lucrative private tutoring gig, and I really enjoyed it. And I did that for several years, and I worked for that same company, eventually ending up running a English language school that they had in Boston. Then I left that, switched career paths, long story, but 11 or 12 years ago, I was interested in getting back dealing with students and whatnot. So I reached out to Hyde in Woodstock, like Justin, and that's how I started there. And there's a big difference between teaching, tutoring, where you're teaching like a specific skill in a short period of time, versus classroom. So it's really been an interesting journey to see the difference in the way that you approach things.
Something I've enjoyed, Sean, in learning about you is what you were like as a high school student. Since we're all working with high schoolers, it's interesting to think about how you were. Will you just share a little bit about what you were like when you were in high school?
I was a poor student. I was a sort of an angry kid who was in trouble all the time. So I spent more time, in the vice principal's office than I did probably in my classes. And, I made his life difficult. I ended up not finishing high school, went on to just get a job. I worked for 5 or 6 years before I decided that what I was doing wasn't what I wanted to do. So I had to go figure out how to get into college. I hadn't taken a math class in years, so I taught myself geometry and algebra, and then took the SAT, got the top 10%. That gave me the opportunity to go to college, but I really had a lot of catching up to do because I hadn't written a paper or any of those sort of like very basic skills. So I was coming in really on the ground floor, and I was able to really thrive in college, and it was a huge change in my life. And I wanted other people like me who did not enjoy school to have a better experience, and that's part of why I'm here.
And how do you think your experience as a student and then essentially teaching yourself math, SATs, how has that shaped who you are as an educator for students in high school?
Well, having to teach myself is a really good foundation for teaching others, I think. But also, one of the things that I want my students to be able to do is when they are not getting what they need, sort of fed to them, I want them to be able to figure out how to do it on their own. I want them to develop some grit and have the skills to go out and find the information they need and keep working at it until they understand.
Yeah, giving them that self-initiated curiosity.
Yeah.
Great. Ruth, what were you like as a high school student?
I was a good student, but I think it was all about memorization. So I was really bad at math and English, which is funny because now I'm teaching it. But I was better at those subjects that you could just like memorize all the information. But if I forgot a word, then I forgot everything that I had to write down. So I felt like, I just kept memorizing stuff, and then it was so easy for me to forget it. So at the end of high school, I'm like, I don't remember anything that I've learned. I did have really good teachers on the last years of high school that were not all about memorization. It was more understanding. And so like philosophy was something that I loved because like the teacher didn't even let us take notes. It was just like focused. I was a good student. I was just quiet and shy, and I didn't like being exposed in front of other students. So if I had to talk in front of the class, I would freak out and say I didn't know what they were asking me, even if I knew the answers, just so that I didn't have to talk in front of, the rest of the class, even if I talked to them the rest of the day. So, just shy, quiet, good.
And when you work with a student who is similar to how you were, what is your approach when you're working with them?
Well, I don't think I've met a student as shy and quiet as I was, but I just try to let them participate when they feel ready to do it and figure out stuff like in pairs or small groups before they are exposed in front of the whole class to actually have to talk and say the answer so that they're not freaking out about doing that.
Giving them tools to have the confidence in a larger group. Great. And Justin, how were you as a student in high school? What were you like?
Well, high school for me was certainly more of an avenue for athletics than it was academics. I would say I was a pretty average student, did my homework, did okay on tests and quizzes, didn't really excel a whole lot besides, gym class, and English. English was always my favorite subject. But, I would say, on the outside was more, your classic kind of jock behind closed doors, maybe breaking some rules here and there, kind of a classic American public high school type of guy.
And since you have been in high school, how has who you are as a learner just changed and how you approach your profession?
Yeah, I think I really, once I was able to actually get into college, that was a big sort of step in my life, something I didn't really even believe was even possible really for me. That's where I sort of developed my curiosity through working with tutors and, being in the library late at night, having, more privilege and more opportunities on certain projects in classes than I thought of in high school. I think that was kind of the spark that has helped, transition to my professional life, and something that I hope to inspire and pass on to the next generation.
And you're also, you mentioned the athletic component and that importance for you, and I see that ring true as your role as a coach and a teacher in the classroom. And how do you take what some of the lessons that you learned as a student athlete, and how do you bring that into the day-to-day at school here?
I would say structure. I would say structure is a big part of that. Having a game plan for your own success. Thinking about what are the steps that need to be taken. What are my strengths? What are my challenges? What's holding me back? Doing the little things. The little things count the most. And I think all of that sort of ties into being a part of something bigger than yourself. And so whether you're on a team, whether you're in a classroom, wherever you are in life, you're always you're only as good as the people around you.
So your class can be like your team and vice versa. And so now, after a little trip down memory lane, how do you think education has changed? And maybe, Ruth, this question looks a little different since you grew up in Spain and now you're here teaching at an American colegio, an American high school. And so how do you think education has changed and shifted, or how have you seen it even shift in your time as an educator? And let's start with you, Sean, just because you're the oldest.
Thanks. So I'm old enough to have gone to college before the internet was a thing. So there's a pretty substantial difference in the way that kids access information and the value they place on the ability to do that. And even things like note-taking, it's really difficult to convince a kid that technology is not the best way to take notes and to actually do it on paper, which all of the social science tells us is a fact. You're much better off to be taking your notes on paper. But kids are so used to using their devices, and they want to do it that way. Like, they'd prefer to take a picture of the board rather than write it down. And it simply isn't nearly as good. But if you can convince them of that, that can make a big difference, and you suddenly see a marked improvement in their recall and their processing.
Yeah, so while tech can be an aid in the classroom, it does serve as a distraction at times in learning, what I hear you saying. Yes,
very much. Even if you're trying to use it as a learning tool, it sometimes isn't as effective as you'd like it to be.
Justin, for you, since you were in high school, or even since you've started as an educator, where have you seen shifts or changes in education and amongst students?
Yeah, I think technology has played a major role right now. I think we're on sort of an uphill trend right now, sort of with AI and where that's taking us. I think there are good and bad things in terms of students being able to use sort of different or have more opportunities to use to follow, I guess, their own curiosities, either through like the internet, through AI. But I would say technology and the influx of technology into education has been the biggest change I've seen.
Right. And since we were also students ourselves, technology was a tool, and now it seems like that's all that students have really, where, I'm saving my work on flash drives or even still handwriting notes, as you mentioned, Sean. That's certainly been a huge, huge shift in what I see with students. And we'll come back to that. But Ruth, I'm also curious for you, how has student life changed throughout, even in Spain as well, and then what you've noticed here in the United States?
I will say the biggest change has been technology, as they mentioned, but also the way I learned in Spain was way different than the way I learned here. So I did my senior year here, that counted as my junior year in Spain, for the difference in the educational system. And I feel like here they gave you the tools to to be successful at exams and everything. So maybe we made a document in class, and then you could use that as part of your quiz and things like that. So it was more helpful, whereas I felt like the education in Spain is like you study for the quiz, and then if you fail, then it's on you, not. So it was, I saw a huge difference on the educational system in that way. But also I felt like here it was way more interactive in the class, and a lot of like fun activities. And there, I think like in Spain, we just follow the curriculum and you take the information to throw it up in an exam, and that's how you pass the course. But I don't think I still remember some things that I learned studying here. I do not remember what I learned in Spain because I was just memorizing stuff, as I said before. And then now, like teaching, like my last year of university was 2020, and I was in Germany then, and classes moved online completely. So I think that also helped a lot with different tools that we needed to teach classes using technology, because that was the only resource during COVID. And I think then I started teaching private classes online as well, and that gave me a lot of, that helped me get resources online. And I think that has been useful because I feel like now students need more motivation to focus in the class, and the technology helps with that, but it can also be distracting. But
Yeah, it does take an extra level of creativity as a teacher in how to use the technology, but in a way that doesn't distract, but integrates from, what you're trying to work with and work on with the students. A question I get as a teacher, which I have for you all, is why high school students? What do you enjoy about, or why have you chosen to work with high school students? Justin, why you?
I've chosen to work with high school students pretty simply because I had a great high school experience, and I want to try and be sort of that teacher, that mentor, that coach, that person for others. I had a lot of great coaches, teachers, mentors in my own experience, and I sort of just want to, pay it forward, pay it back. And certainly working in private school, I get to meet kids, families, students from all over the world, which is certainly more unique or different than my own upbringing. And so I've found that incredibly enriching.
And as you mentioned, high school is a really formative time in one's life. What about you, Sean?
Funny because my answer is the opposite. I had a bad high school experience, and that's a big part of why I like teaching high school. I think that, especially in a private school setting, you can be really more involved in the students' lives, and you can be more honest with them about what does matter and what doesn't, and why things are the way they are. And so wanting to help students to have a good high school experience so that they can go out and do whatever they do next, probably college, and enjoy that and get the most out of that as well. That's a big part of my motivation.
Yeah, you're building the springboard for them to catapult off of into their next steps. I like that. And for you, Ruth?
well, I was teaching at university before, and I actually really liked that. But I feel like at university they've already chosen their path, and high school is a great moment to prepare them for what comes after. And I thought it could be a good idea to come to high school and prepare them for that next path that they have to choose and help them out with that. So
Great. My next question is, what is something, thinking about your first year in teaching and stepping into that role, what is something you would like to tell your former self, or what's advice that you could give to somebody thinking about stepping into education or becoming a teacher?
Figure out a good system for giving assessments and homework, because that's, as a first year teacher, that's sort of the one thing that I think everyone finds kind of overwhelming is, oh my God, I have so much grading to do, I have so much of this to do, so much of that to do. And if you can learn from a senior teacher better ways of giving quality assessments that you can then grade and get back to the students in a timely fashion without driving yourself crazy, it's a huge part of being a teacher.
And I would like to highlight finding a role model, a senior
Yeah.
teacher, somebody who you can learn from on how to be a teacher. Yeah. What about you, Ruth?
be patient and don't have high expectations. I think it's better if you have low expectations of what they know already so that you can work with that instead of having high expectations and then getting frustrated at them not knowing because you don't know their background, what they've learned, what they haven't learned. And I think that, and also to set the expectations that you have at the beginning so that then you can have more control and they know what you expect from them at the very beginning so that you don't have to work on that later on in the semester when it gets harder.
Right, holding those boundaries. Yeah. They don't know at the time, but they love the boundaries. What about you, Justin?
I would say certainly don't take things personally. That was a big one. I sort of had to learn my first year. You're going to have, even if you spend, a lot of time having this, perfect lesson plan in your mind, and you show up and things don't go the way, don't take it personally. Just keep coming back. The students will, see that and buy into that. And I would also say just have fun. Have fun. I think that is that can get you through some of the ups and downs of certainly, the first year troubles or, of teaching.
The having fun piece, I think, is really important, and it's something that you all wouldn't be doing what you are doing if it wasn't fun and fulfilling. And with that, I just have two last questions. One is, what is something you're hoping your students outside of the classroom, inside the classroom, just take away from you as an educator moving on in their own lives? And then the second would be, what's the most rewarding thing that you have experienced as a teacher? And so who'd ever like to jump in for that first?
I can go first. What I most want my students to take away from anything I'm teaching is some grit, self-motivation. I think that because we all have, the answers to every question in our pocket, we can sort of get in a habit of not trying to figure things out and think things through on our own and just look up the answer kind of thing. And so that's one thing that I think, more than anything else, I want them to be careful thinkers who are willing to put in the effort on their own before they're just looking up the answer. And as far as fun moments, I have lots and lots of, really standout moments. Just one that comes to mind. A few years ago, I was subbing for a teacher here at Hyde, and they were going over imaginary numbers. And Mr. Fonta was in that class at the time. And I just saw the light bulb go off in his head, and he had a big smile on his head as he got it. And that was a really, really fun memory for me. And now he's here teaching with us.
Yeah, so seeing some of your former students become your colleagues, this can be really rewarding. And what about you, Ruth?
I want them to have the image of me that I'm motivating, engaging, and fun. That's like, if they cannot learn something, at least they can have fun in my class. That would be nice, but also supportive and kind of a role model. So not only Spanish or English, not the language itself, but just as how I approach the class and how I am as a teacher. And something good that happened is that when I was teaching at university, one of my students was taking Spanish, but just as another subject, compulsory subject that he had to take. And one day he came and said that he would switch his major and he was gonna major in Spanish. So that was really special.
And a nod to the role you played for him
Yeah.
in his learning. And Justin, what about you?
Well, I certainly want my students, to go, be better writers, be better readers, better, more critical thinkers. But I think for me, if they can learn that, no matter what they do in life, if they, attack it with passion and excitement, that's going to go a long way in their favor towards, success. I think, I try and embody that in the classroom. Certainly English isn't everyone's favorite subject sometimes, and I think I try and do a good job of making it, accessible and fun for everybody so that, at the end of the year, people are, the students are better off than where they were when they entered. And certainly moments, I would say, anytime, the students sort of, they'll write or draw or anything or give me notes, that's always something that stands in my mind. Little mementos here and there. I would say over the summer, I had a student reach out, a former student, ask for some feedback on something they were working on, a writing project. Just left me a really nice note saying, that they appreciated everything I did for them. And, it's the little things like that, keep you going.
Right. You're planting seeds, you're making a difference, and then hearing that is really reaffirming as an educator. Well, for the three of you, I just want to thank you for your role as an educator, for who you are and what you do in our school and with our students. You three all play a key role. And I also want to thank you for your time, because I also know as an educator that is very precious. So thank you all.
Thank you.
This has been Hyde Talk, and I'm your host, Jen Lobozzo. Please make sure to check us out on all your favorite social media podcast platforms. Thank you.